Unfortunately, there is no way now we as gamers will ever be free of the microtransaction cancer that has infected our games, spreading from the early days of mobile gaming into the lymph nodes of real gaming. But this game might, just might, be a kind of inoculation to protect a few more vital organs from growing tumors. A rather unpleasant metaphor, I'll admit, but stick with me here, kind and attentive viewer. I'm going to make sense of it, I promise you. And I'll stop making medical metaphors. So, have you been playing Genshin Impact since launch? Have you tried it yet? What do you think of it? What do you think of how they've done microtransactions, rather more importantly, and in relevance to this particular video? Because it seems like quite a few people are playing it and very much like how the microtransactions work. Because Genshin Impact here has pulled in $245 million in its first month of being live, making it one of the biggest mobile game launchers ever. And unlike many in this realm of extreme high-earning mobile titles before it, it has done so as a brand new IP. It's not a port from other platforms like Fortnite was. It's not riding on the coattails of long-established, deeply loved and already successful franchises like Mario or Pokémon, for example, but as a brand spanking new, from the ground up beast all of its own. Genshin Impact is also a free-to-play game, so every single cent of that 245 million smackers has been voluntarily handed over to the publisher. And rather unlike a lot, if not the overwhelming majority of free-to-play games, Genshin Impact is in fact free-to-play in an unusually real and accessible way, especially considering it's on mobile platforms where games are notoriously trashy about this kind of stuff. But it's not just a mobile game, by the way, if you've missed that fact. It's also on PC, which is where I myself have spent most of my own playtime. It's also on PS4, but beware, those of you interested in trying it on PlayStation, you will be trapped on PlayStation, because unlike all of the other platforms which are cross-save, because unlike all of the other platforms, you can pick up where you left off on mobile to PC and vice versa, etc. PlayStation players, however, are locked to only ever playing on PlayStation because Sony are anti-consumer dickheads. If you're interested, my original review goes a bit deeper into detail about the Sony issue and my opinions on how the microtransactions are implemented and integrated overall. Hello again, I am Blunty, and this traveller would be appreciative if you considered helping out with the Dark Lord YouTube algorithm by popping a comment, hitting a thumb, and if you're a regular around these here parts, click the bell, make sure it's running, because otherwise YouTube balks me over and actually showing my videos to people who already asked to be shown my videos, because subscribe doesn't actually mean subscribe all of the time, because YouTube are also dicks. So, this tremendous number, this money data, comes via a company called Sensor Tower. They track data and insights for app developers. It's an estimate. This doesn't come from official sources, and by the nature of these tracking systems of this third party, which only track analytics and revenue estimates on mobile devices, so don't take into account any spending at all that has happened on other platforms outside of Apple's iOS App Store and Google Play, so we don't know how much PC players or PlayStation players are also spending on top of these estimates. For all we know, it could in fact be $260 million or more. And their data shows in the first week alone on mobile devices, Genshin Impact's mobile players spent about $60 million in 1 week. For perspective, even Fortnite only did $25 million in its first month on the App Store. And of course, as is always the case, Apple iPhone users actually pay for their stuff more often than the cheap-out compromise makers who settle for cheap, plasticky, nasty Android phones, with iOS users accounting for nearly 60% of revenue. To be clear, Android users, that was bait, and I will laugh at you if you snap at it. So, what does this all mean, and why did I start this video with that confronting medical metaphor? Well, it's an interesting thought. On the one hand, it's yet another example grey-faced suit-wearing executive a-holes who've never played a video game to sit around in boardrooms and point to charts that prove gamers really like microtransactions. And therefore, they should be in every game ever, because obviously we're spending money on microtransactions, so they should be in every game, so we have the opportunity, the privilege of buying microtransactions in every single game that is made for us. Oh wait, that already happened, hadn't it? On the other hand, though, Genshin Impact is genuinely something new, and might influence the whole of gaming in a very interesting way. I mean, yes, obviously, on the surface, any gamer worth their salt will instantly recognize the many inspirations borrowed from the extreme success and praise of Breath of the Wild and similar games. And while beyond the surface resemblances, it does play quite differently than that game did. The core gameplay itself is also still nothing exceptionally bright and shining new. No, when I say it's new, I mean it's in context of it being the very first free-to-play mobile game that I've ever tried that doesn't treat its player base like raw coin purses to be mined by any and every manipulative, nasty, skeevy, sleazy trick on the book. Before now, there has only been one other free-to-play game that I respect, and that's Dauntless, and that's not even on mobile yet. The structure of the core microtransactions, while yes, it is based on gambling loot box style mechanics for characters, otherwise known as a gacha game, they aren't hard baked into the game core itself. The game is actually structured so a purely free-to-play gamer can progress at a good pace. They can engage with every single aspect of the game, every single mechanic, every single thing you can do as a free-to-play gamer. There's nothing, content-wise, that is locked behind a paywall. For every puzzle and dungeon in the game, it can be absolutely played with the characters and abilities and tools you get for free just by playing the game normally. And for the largest part, you can progress just as fast as a paying player can do. There is an energy type system in the game that is an exception to that. It can stall out how much of certain things you can do in a day, and that system can be replenished in both free and paid ways. With the paid way obviously offering an advantage in speed. But there's also so much to do in the game. A free-to-play player hitting that wall isn't left with nothing else to do. There's still gameplay to be had, unlike in many games with similar energy systems, which just brick wall you until you literally wait a whole day or more, or pay up. So as far as microtransaction systems go, for free-to-play games like this with gacha systems, I have no serious complaints about how it's implemented here. Could it be kinder? Absolutely. And they are in fact changing a few things to remove some of the related frustrations players have complained about to make things even friendlier still. They're genuinely listening and tweaking the systems as we go and responding to the gamers. They get that the happier the player base is, the more players will stay around for longer and the larger potential there is for a few more of these people to maybe pay down the line when they see enough value in doing so. The second thing that makes this game different from every other free-to-play game I've seen, with the exception of Dauntless, is it's genuinely made well. Mechanically, it feels great. Content-wise, it's very well fleshed out. Everything from the care and detail in every single environment in the game, the character designs, the storytelling, the characters, the voice acting even. Although, to be fair, most of the characters are reasonably one-dimensional and rely heavily on typical anime fantasy tropes, but that's not always a bad thing. That can be fun in and of itself. People like familiar things. The game is big, thick, and fun, genuinely fun. And wrap that around its unusually thoughtful microtransaction system, and I'm happy to add it to the very short list of 2 free-to-play games with microtransactions that I can happily recommend to people. For both being extremely accessible as a free player and having payment options and systems that aren't crappy or manipulative or skeevy or slimy. And that's what I mean about how it might influence the whole of gaming in a very interesting way. Based on the immense success of this title already, I very strongly hope we see more like it. Which could mean either more free-to-play games having a lot more effort and care put into their construction as real and proper games worth playing, games that if it had no microtransactions and just was a simple traditional one-off purchase price would still be worth paying for, instead of just a bright and loud wrapping around a system of cynical psychological manipulations to zombify people into emptying their wallets into a gambling black hole, as is the case for the largest majority of other mobile games with this type of gambling microtransaction systems in them. The other option might be to prove to developers that some games which they already have choked full of microtransactions, but also have an upfront cost to them, might very well do better, be more accessible, have more people eager to try them out because it'd be free to try instead of buying in. They might be better off just making that game free to play from the start. Like I said in the opening, there's no way now we as gamers will ever be free of the microtransactions. They've infected our games. They're here to stay. There's nothing we can do about it at this point. But if we're stuck with these medical complications, perhaps at least we can start going back to them being only in free-to-play games and leave the full-priced ones clean of them. It'll never completely flip back to what it was once upon a time in gaming, of course, before microtransactions were everywhere. Greed is too strong in the executives. But if only a few developers reconsider the possibility that a full-scale game like Genshin Impact can still do wildly well and make them a ton of money and be free for people to play, well, we may just see a few more like it and be slightly better off as gamers for it. And again, on the opposite side of that coin, maybe, just maybe, people who are making games intended to be free to play from the start are going to work a bit harder on them and give us some of our gamer dignity back. So we dropped off as cynical in the end there, but overall, unusually optimistic for someone as dry and as cynical as I usually am, I know, but I am legitimately impressed with what Genshin Impact has done here. I asked you at the beginning, I'm asking you again. What is your opinion? Have you tried it? How do you feel about it? How do you feel about the microtransactions? If you could change something about the way the microtransactions work in this game, what would it be? What other games would you like to see go this route or move away from this route? What would you like to see change? Thank you for watching. I am Lunty. Thank you, as always, to the glorious and kind and thoughtful and generous patrons crawling by up above there. Your support means a tremendous amount. Thank you for that. I promise never spend any of your money on microtransactions. I'll only spend that on real things like, rent and bills and food. You have my word.